The word conspiracy derives from the Latin con, with, together, and spirare, to breathe. The world is abound with mystery. Occasionally, we get to glimpse behind the curtain. So let's take a breath together and do some research. Hi, my name is Alex Witney, and this is Conspiracy 101. Today, we're looking into the New World Order. Now, this is an interesting one. We've been building up to some of the slightly larger topics, and this is a big one, and it will inevitably be short of information. It's not going to have everything that we could possibly talk about in regards to the New World Order. So I think what we're going to do is more briefly look at various different things and then branch off in later episodes towards specifics. And that'll allow us to have sort of a base understanding. And I've done this before with various other topics, when we talked about giants. We didn't really go into depth about Agartha and all that kind of stuff. When we talked about Atlantis, we didn't really go into depth about all the other different islands and lost civilizations as a whole. We're doing this as sort of like a nice foundation as to what the New World Order is and the various splinter groups that believe different conspiracy theories, because there's not one real central. Well, I guess there's one central, isn't there, when you think about it? But the book, Top Secret Cover-Ups. Of course there's a section on New World Order. Of course there is. So let's have a look. Oh, I'm touching the microphone. New World Order. During the Persian Gulf War, US President George H.W. Bush, you can tell when this was written, sent right-wing conspiracists into paroxysms of excitement when, in a September 1990 speech, the first one isn't HW's the first one. I'm so very sorry. I'm English, you see. I do not know the American presidents as well as I probably should. In a September 1990 speech to Congress, he announced, "Out of these troubled times, a new world order can emerge." Here, finally, the fears of John Birch Society were confirmed. John Birch Society we will get into. George Bush was bent on introduction of one world government controlled by a small cabal of capitalists. To rub the noses of the Birch boys in the dirt, Poppy Bush just kept on repeating the NWO phrase at every public opportunity. The John Birch Society based much of its analysis on the New World Order menace on a 1,300-page pioneering history of the 20th century by Professor Carroll Quigley of Georgetown University in his Tragedy and Hope 1966. Quigley stated, "There does exist, and has existed for a generation, an international Anglophile network. I have studied it for 20 years and was permitted to examine its papers and secret records. This was the holy grail for conspiracists, a certified top-drawer academic putting it on record that a worldwide conspiracy by a few truly existed." Quigley, warming to his hypothesis, explained that the British diamond magnate Cecil Rhodes, it's a name that will come up a few times in Conspiracy 101, left his fortune to form a secret society, which continues to exist to this day. The secret society was the Round Table Group, later remodeled as the Royal Institute of International Affairs. Quigley himself found the Round Table Project to turn the world into a stable Anglophone society, largely commendable. Okay, I'm not going to read the whole thing because obviously, this is someone's work. It doesn't go into massive detail because obviously this is a book of, the biggest conspiracies, cover-ups, whatever you want to call them. Here are a few things that are highlighted. Council on Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission, Bilderberg Group, Illuminati, Black Helicopters, British Royal Family, Bilderberg Group again, Le Cercle, and they're the ones that are familiar. There's further reading, which is really nice. I always like it when, has some sources, or at least something you can look into after. Say if there was one of these that you were really interested in. This book is basically what we're doing here, Wikipedia research, but in a book. And that's, that's nice sometimes. So the summary is, a secret cabal is manipulating the UN to secure one world government, alert level 4, which is quite low. And then it has a little document and the specific speech by George H.W. Bush, which is quite long. That is really long. There's the entire speech. Okay, fair enough. Interesting. So, we haven't had that for a while, an actual in the cover-up book. I think for most of this show today, we're going to go with Trust Your Gut. I think a lot of this has to be, you have to really think about what's going on. Some of it might be a bit out there. Most of the times when we're doing these shows, we're concentrating on one specific thing. Even if we're doing the background research for a lot of things, like we do with Atlantis, Giants, etc., we're concentrating on one thing, like Atlantis or Giants. Whereas this one is kind of encompasses a lot. So the main conspiracy, what is the New World Order? Simply put, it is a group of people trying to make a government that controls the world. Now, how you break that down is up to the individual conspiracy theorist. And we'll be going through some of the different ways in which people think that is a thing, which is really interesting, and that's, the main show. So, yeah, like I said, trust your gut, because we're going to be going through a lot. So, where do we start? My mantra by now, incognito mode. Of course we do. I'm not sponsored by a VPN, so, you start with the basics. Also, I've heard people have been saying, oh, VPN, I'm not sponsored by a VPN, you should use a VPN. I'm not saying I'm not using a VPN. I'm just saying I'm not sponsored by one. Also, never use a free VPN. Because if something is free, then you are the commodity. You are what's paying for it. Whether that's your information, how you're going. This is a conspiracy theory in itself, isn't it? But this is kind of, known. So just be careful with VPNs. There's a few that are trusted, and hopefully one of them will sponsor me. Maybe, I don't know. Right. New World Order. Let's zoom in. Oh, that's too much. 150% seems appropriate. Oh, look at that above my head. The New World Order, NWO, is a conspiracy theory which hypothesizes a secretly emerging totalitarian world government. Oh, there we go. Already clicking on the Antichrist. That's a. Ooh. The common theme in conspiracy theories about a New World Order is that a secretive power elite with a globalist agenda, goddamn globalists, is conspiring to eventually rule the world through an authoritarian one-world government which will replace sovereign nation-states, and an all-encompassing propaganda whose ideology hails the establishment of the New World Order as the culmination of history's progress. Many influential historical and contemporary figures have therefore been alleged to be part of a cabal. Let's just clear up what a cabal is. Cabal is a group of people who are united in some close design, usually to promote their private views or interests in an ideology, a state, or another community, often by intrigue, and usually unbeknownst to those who are outside their group. So a group of conspirators that operates through many front organizations is an entity set up by and controlled by another organization, such as intelligence agencies, organized crime groups, terrorist organizations, secret societies, banned organizations, religious or political groups, etc., etc., to orchestrate significant political and financial events, ranging from causing system crises to pushing through controversial policies, awkwardly topical at the moment, at both national and international levels, as steps in an ongoing plot to achieve world domination. This is the reverse side of the Great Seal of the United States, 1776. The Latin phrase, Novus Ordo Seclorum, appearing on the reverse side of the Great Seal since 1782 and on the back of the US $1 bill since 1933, translates to New Order of the Ages, and alludes to the beginning of an era where the United States of America is an independent nation-state. Conspiracy theorists, however, claim this is an allusion to the New World Order. You'll find that a lot when it comes to conspiracies and conspiracy theories, that the idea of peppering in information, that there might be insider agents. One of the famous now, infamous, is obviously QAnon, which I'm sure at some point we will get to, where they pepper information, release information to allow people of the world to try and understand what is going on behind closed doors. A really famous one is obviously Kubrick and the NASA. He helped to record the moon landings, and within his films, he's peppered information in order to try and, without outwardly saying it, infer that. And you'll find that a lot. So the idea that the seal of the United States is alluding to a new world order is someone within that group, not necessarily boasting or being, overtly trying to show, what we're doing. We can get away with this, but maybe someone trying to sneak it out there, etc., etc. Before the early 1990s, New World Order conspiracism was limited to two American countercultures, primarily the militantly anti-government right and secondarily part of the fundamentalist Christianity concerned with the end-time emergence of the Antichrist. We've seen this a lot. A lot of conspiracy theories go back to Christianity in its many shapes and forms. Skeptics such as Michael Barkern and Chip Burley observed that right-wing populist conspiracy theories about a New World Order had not only been embraced by many seekers of stigmatized knowledge, but had seeped into popular culture, thereby inaugurating a period during the late 20th and early 21st centuries in the United States where people are actively preparing for apocalyptic millenarian scenarios. That's Y2K. But like the greater Y2K events, if that makes sense. The fact that we're coming to an arbitrary number, seemingly important. And there are many examples of that, and many groups that have observed such timelines for the end of the world or some kind of, variation on that. 2020, Mayans, the Heaven's Gate, etc., etc. Those political scientists are concerned that mass hysteria over New World Order conspiracy theories could eventually have devastating effects on American political life, ranging from escalating lone wolf terrorism to the rise to power of authoritarian ultranationalist demagogues. A demagogue, or rabble-rouser, is a political leader within a democracy who gains popularity by arousing the common people against elites. That's been done many a time before. Nearly, there's always one demagogue or rabble-rouser in every dissolution of a monarchy, isn't there? Right, look at all these, look at all this. Ooh. Girlfriend, that's a lot of stuff. Look at all these individual conspiracy theories. Excellent. Love it. Right. New World Order politics, history of the term, general usage pre-Cold War. Let's briefly touch on this because it's not necessarily important to what we're talking about as a conspiracy goes, because there is a separate, I guess there's two separate ideas here, isn't there? There's the New World Order conspiracy and then there's the New World Order political establishment of not necessarily variations of nation states, but what you can see with the EU and other such organizations, the African one, which I always forget the name of, the North American Treaty, the old Soviet bloc, where countries, when they are working together, are able to demand more, are able to get more, are less likely to be threatened by other countries in terms of war. But then that obviously leads to the conspiracy theories about a New World Order, and it's not necessarily the nation states wanting to do that together, but a small group that want that so that they can, The UN is obviously a really good example of an organization that tries to get every single country to work together. So I'm guessing this is what it's going to talk about. General usage, pre-Cold War. During the 20th century, political figures such as Woodrow Wilson and Winston Churchill used the term New World Order to refer to a new period of history characterized by a dramatic change in world political thought and in the global balance of power after World War I and World War II. I think you mean the Second World War and the First World War, American Wikipedia. The interwar and post-Second World War period were seen as opportunities to implement idealistic proposals for global governance by collective efforts to address worldwide problems that go beyond the capacity of individual nation-states to resolve, while nevertheless respecting the right of nations to self-determination. Such collective initiatives manifested in the formation of intergovernmental organizations such as the League of Nations, which League of Nations became UN, didn't it? I don't know. The United Nations and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, in the news a lot at the moment. British writer and futurist H.G. Wells went further than progressives in the 1940s by appropriating and redefining the term New World Order as a synonym for the establishment of a technocratic world state and a planned economy, garnering popularity in state socialist circles. Usage as reference to a conspiracy, Cold War era. During the Second Red Scare, both secular and Christian right American agitators, largely influenced by the work of Canadian conspiracy theorist William Guy Carr, increasingly embraced and spread dubious fears of Freemasons, Illuminati, and Jews as the alleged driving forces behind an international communist conspiracy. Right. Whoa! That is a lot of different people. So let's, I'm just marking where we are. Let's get our Canva up and fill it up. Right, Freemasons. I'm pretty sure there is a have I spelt Freemasons wrong? How did I spell that wrong? I didn't spell it wrong. I put it in the wrong thing. I put it in templates. There's no Freemason template. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I would prefer it's coming up with a lot of Illuminati stuff. I would prefer the G with the Masonic sort of school. That'll do. Yeah. Oh, you can't see that at all. That is terrible. That's coming out terrible. A lot of the line work stuff just does not appear well. Maybe if I just type in Mason. It's coming up with Mason jars. Of course it is. We got the eye. That can be Illuminati. I love that eye. It doesn't really reflect anything, does it? It's a set square, isn't it? Is it set square? Masonry? Freemasonry? There we go. There it is. That's what I'm after. So it is a set square and a compass and stuff. Cool. What else did we have? We had Jews. So let's put the Star of David. There you are. Beautiful. Stick you down there. These aren't placed in any particular order today. I'm just moving them around, seeing what looks nice. And what else was there? Illuminati, we've got that. And of course, the communists. Let's go gold. Beautiful. Right. Okay. That is a lot of different. Already, we're on 4 different groups that may be responsible, either in whole or in part, for this conspiracy. The threat of a godless communism in the form of atheistic, bureaucratic, collectivist world government demonized as the Red Menace became the focus of apocalyptic millenarium conspiracism. How did I get through that? That's a lot of words. The Red Scare came to shape one of the core ideas of the political right in the United States, which is that liberals and progressives were, with their welfare state policies and international cooperation programs such as foreign aid, supposedly contributed to gradual process of global collectivism that will inevitably lead to nations being replaced with communistic, collectivist, one world government. What does that link to? World communism. Interesting. I'm just going to mute myself. Really need to stop huffing paint. Right, where are we? James Warburg, appearing before the United States Senate Committee on Foreign Relations in 1950, famously stated, "We shall have world government whether or not we like it. The question is only whether world government will be achieved by consent or by conquest." I presume he's from wherever. He's German, so that accent's way off. Okay, okay, here we go. We're getting into it now. Shadow governments. The anti-globalist conspiracism fueled the campaign for US withdrawal from the UN. Very interesting. The establishment of the US Federal Reserve in 1913 by international bankers, whom she claimed... Oh, this is Mary M. Davison, by the way. Later formed the Council on Foreign Relations in 1921 as a shadow government. At the time the booklet was published, many readers would have interpreted international bankers as a reference to a postulated international Jewish banking conspiracy masterminded by the Rothschild family. The Rothschild family are going to have their own episode, so we're not going to go into them, but I feel like we do need to add them to the list because they will come up lots and lots. How do you even spell Rothschild? Roth, like that. And then S-child, okay. It appears that Rothschild is also a type of giraffe. So because obviously Canva doesn't have, Rothschilds, let's just that'd be our representation of the Rothschilds. A nice giraffe. Okay. You'll see this a lot with many conspiracy theories or at least you'll see it with many conspiracy theories, but also less so with modern conspiracy theories. A lot of this pre-Second World War, you'll see the anti-Semitism within a lot of conspiracy theories. This one, obviously. It isn't just the cabal is Jews or a Jewish cabal, and you'll see that a lot with lots of different things, and they're pointing the fingers. But you'll also see that they will use other words rather than Jews. So for this one, they're saying international bankers didn't really mean international bankers. It was just a byword or a placeholder for Jews, and you'll see this a lot with modern conspiracies, where the people who are arguing against the conspiracy will say, you're not actually talking about reptilian humanoids, you're actually talking about Jews. So keep that in mind because that will come up. Arguing that the term New World Order is used by a secretive global elite dedicated to the eradication of sovereignty of the world's nations, American writer Gary Allen, in his books None Dare Call It Conspiracy and Rockefeller Campaigning for the New World Order and Say No to the New World Order, articulated an anti-globalist theme of contemporary right-wing conspiracism. In the US, after the fall of communism in the early 1990s, the de facto subject of New World Order conspiracism shifted from crypto-communists. That kind of has a different meaning nowadays, doesn't it? Crypto-communists. Perceived to be plotting to establish an atheistic world communist government, to globalists perceived to be plotting to eliminate a collectivist, generally unified world government ultimately controlled by an untouchable oligarchy of international bankers, corrupt politicians and corporates, or the United Nations itself. Woo! Girlfriend, there's a lot of different stuff to put in there. So communism fell out of favor when the one of the largest communist countries in the world stopped being communist, and that then shifted to this idea that it was a global elite, and the word globalist kind of loses all meaning, doesn't it, at the moment? I think most people who hear that they'll hear it and it just sort of, it just means nothing. Will that work? Oh, that's really freaky. I don't like that. That's a beautiful looking globe. Do flat earthers believe in globalist? Would they use that terminology? It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because it does sort of go against it slightly. Anyway, post-Cold War uses. American televangelist, again telling, Pat Robertson, with his 1991 best-selling book The New World Order, became the most prominent Christian disseminator of conspiracy theories about recent American history. He describes a scenario where Wall Street, the Federal Reserve System, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Bilderberg Group, and the Trilateral Commission control the flow of events from behind the scenes, constantly nudging people covertly in the direction of world government for the Antichrist. Right. Bilderberg Group is the annual off-the-record conference established in 1954 to foster dialogue between Europe and North America. It was basically the elites getting together and talking about things and how, they could, a little wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I'm sure that happens a lot. This is just one that people can point to. The Trilateral Commission is a non-governmental international organization aimed at fostering closer cooperation between Japan, Western Europe, and North America. Again, an organization trying to bring people together, but you can easily see why people will generate theories around that. Right, Wall Street, banking. We need to get the bankers on there. What? Oh, it just goes white. Weird. Right, bankers. I don't know what happens. Banker it comes up with a tie. He looks like a real estate person. Let's just type in cash money. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. Oh no. There we go. And then Antichrist. Now, I don't think it's going to have an Antichrist. Oh, it has Baphomet. Is it Baphomet? Is that what he's saying? That's kind of cool. I was going to say, I don't think it'll have any kind of Antichrist stuff. Instead, I'll use an upside down cross, which I know is the cross of St. Peter. Is that right? Am I right in thinking that? So St. Peter was, so an upside down cross is the cross of St. Peter. St. Peter was crucified upside down. Non-Christian groups seem to think that the upside down cross is super anti-Christian, but it's not. It's super Christian. It's one of the main saints. Baphomet, you annoying piece of shit! You're ruining my green screen effect. Look, it's gone all green. You can hide there. You can hide in the corner. Ooh, there's a lot of people. Right. Lots of conspiracy theorists and people. American militia movements. The very don't want to say far right because they're not in comparison to genuine far right. Okay. But the you know where I'm coming. The militia movement's anti-government ideology was and is spread through speeches at rallies and meetings, books and videotapes sold at gun shows, shortwave and satellite radio, fax networks, and computer bulletin boards. It has been argued that it was overnight AM radio shows and propagandistic viral content on the internet that mostly effectively contributed to more extremist responses to perceived threat of a new world order. What can happen I doubt over fax networks, but definitely radio shows, and definitely on the internet. You get a microcosm, don't you? You get that sort of repeating spiral, the ant spiral, death spiral, where you're all what's the best way to explain it? You're all sort of contributing to the same idea. You're all backing up the same idea. You're all confirming what other people are thinking. And I've got a really itchy nose. I don't know why. And that can kind of create this sort of self-governing circle where you're all just sort of patting each other on the arse. This led to substantial growth of New World Order conspiracism, with it retroactively finding its way into previously apolitical literature of numerous Kennedy assassinologists, UFOologists, lost land theorists, and partially inspired by fears surrounding the Satanic Panic occultists. For those who don't know, the Satanic Panic was sort of an early 90s, late 80s, early 90s idea that kids were getting kidnapped and killed, or there was lots of Satanists that were doing unholy things, like genuinely nasty things to children. And a lot of it was just sort of made up. From the mid-90s onwards, the amorphous appeal of those subcultures transmitted New World Order conspiracism to larger audiences of seekers of stigmatized knowledge, with common characteristics of disillusionment of political efficacy. I can read English. From the mid-90s to the early 2000s, Hollywood conspiracy thriller television shows and films also played a role in introducing a general audience to various fringe theories. That's better. Esoteric theories related to New World Order conspiracism. I think that's meant to be I think that's a comma. Which by that point had developed to include black helicopters, FEMA concentration camps, etc. Theories which decades previously were confined to largely right-wing subcultures. The 1993 to 2002 television series The X-Files, the 1997 film Conspiracy Theory, and the X-Files film. Apologies, the alien transmitters are seemingly making their way from my brain into my sinuses. Or it might just be hay fever. I would really like, I think a Conspiracy 101 episode, sort of a side episode on the X-Files and Conspiracy Theory, the film, would be really interesting. Yeah. Following the start of the 21st century, and specifically during the late 2000s financial crisis, so the 2008 one, there's been so many, it's hard to keep track. Many politicians and pundits, such as Gordon Brown, Henry Kissinger, used the term New World Order in their advocacy for comprehensive reform of global financial system. That worked, didn't it? Taking into account emerging markets such as China and India. Okie dokie, 2009, yep. Yeah, so such conspiracy theories such as American theorists such as American radio host Alex Jones, who vigorously oppose what they perceive as emerging New World Order. So that's what it's become, hasn't it? Okay, the conspiracy theory. So here we are. We've read about the history of it, what it is, and there are several versions of it. And these individually could easily be a Conspiracy 101 episode by themselves. And so it'd be very interesting to sort of briefly touch on them. Not necessarily see if there's any truth in them. I think that's what the individual episodes will need. But we can look at their spark, their seeds. And it'd be very interesting to see where we're at. Okay, so there are numerous systemic conspiracy theories through which the concept of a New World Order is viewed. The following list is major ones in roughly chronological order. Then there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 ish. End time. Since the 19th century, many apocalyptic millennial Christian eschatologists, starting with John Nelson Darby, I bet he's British, isn't he? Of course he is. He's Anglo-Irish. Have predicted a globalist conspiracy to impose a tyrannical New World Order governing structure as a fulfillment of prophecies about the end time in the Bible, specifically the book of Ezekiel, book of Daniel, the Olivet Discourse found in the Synoptic Gospels, 2 Esdras, and Revelations. That's apocryphal, surely, yeah. Is it? Ezra, scribe, but it's an apocalyptic book. Some English versions of the Bible is reckoned among the apocrypha of Roman Catholics. Aha. So that's something that's outside the normal, what you would consider the normal Bible as it was put together. Olivet Discourse is a biblical passage found in the Synoptic Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke. It is also known as the Little Apocalypse because it includes use of apocalyptic language. And it includes Jesus' warning to his followers that they will suffer tribulation and persecution before the ultimate triumph of the kingdom of God. Ah, yes. So that's the one that says, basically, you're all of my closest followers are going to die horrible, terrible deaths, but don't worry about it, you'll be fine. And then, okay, it's pretty true. Yeah. Okay, so you got the idea that the biblical story is not necessarily talking about what happened during those times, but is a prediction for relatively modern events, 19th century to now. Still a couple hundred years, isn't it? And not about an end time that was closer to Jesus, closer to Ezekiel or Daniel. In many contemporary Christian conspiracy theories, the false prophet will either be the last pope of the Catholic Church, groomed and installed by an Alta Venita, okay, that's a specific one, or a Jesuit conspiracy, very interesting, a guru from a New Age movement, or even the leader of an elite fundamentalist Christian organization like The Fellowship. Oh, the Family International, yeah. Ooh. While the Antichrist will either be the President of the European Union, the Caliph of a pan-Islamic state, or even the Secretary General of the United Nations. It's interesting that they know what title that person will have. A Culture of Conspiracy, Apocalyptic Visions in Contemporary America, so that's like a compendium. And Revelations, Revolutions, and Tyrannical World Government, the Huffington Post. Again, these are like secondary sources. These aren't sources that are saying, this is going to happen. These are the people you're going to be able to look out for. These are people saying, this guy said that. Probably without actually saying who said that. Some of the most vocal critics of end-time conspiracy theories come from within Christianity. In 1993, historian Bruce Barron wrote, have we got Christianity on there? We don't. We have Judaism, don't we? But we don't have Christianity. Can we have a thumbs up, Christ? We got a thumbs up, Jesus? Jesus. Thumbs. Mm-hmm. There he is. Thumbs up, Christ. Just leave him there. And this isn't me, taking the mick out of Christianity. It's more to sort of show that these theories are the fringes, aren't they, of Christianity? Just like thumbs up Christ. Again, the whole Canva thing, just as an explanation, if you've only come into this episode or you haven't watched some of the earlier episodes where I explain things, it's more to do with helping me remember so that when we come to wrap things up at the end, I have a better idea of all the different things we've talked about, rather than just writing a list. Okay, where were we? Spirit of fear, yeah. Biblical literalism, we've been through that before, haven't we? With the flat earth. Apocalyptic timetables, demonization, etc., etc. pretty normal stuff, to be honest. In terms of fringe Christian beliefs, they've just made their way into the mainstream. I need like a little bonus. Mainstream. Right. Freemasonry. There we go. We talked about them. Freemasons are definitely going to have their own episode, so I'm not going to dwell too much on them. Freemasonry is one of the world's oldest secular fraternal organizations and arose during the late 16th / early 17th century in Britain. I think it's specifically Scotland, so don't put that on me. Over the years, several allegations of conspiracy theories have been directed towards Freemasonry, including the allegation that Freemasons have a hidden political agenda, and are conspiring to bring about a new world order, a world government organized according to the Masonic principles or governed only by Freemasons. Okay. Freemasonry is for a lot of people believe it is a spur or a continuation of the Templars, which will also get a conspiracy 101 because there are so many conspiracy theories about the Templars. The Templars, if you don't know, were a crusader force. Very similar to the Knights Hospitaller, Knights of Malta. And they were in charge of a lot of stuff, had a lot of resources and money, and had, as a result of that, had the ire of nobility and also popedom. And a lot of people think Freemasonry spurred off from those Templars, and a lot of Freemasonry is sort of hidden, secretive, and has a lot of codes, has a lot of history behind it. And obviously isn't necessarily secular, but is not necessarily religious either. So it grew the ire of who we think, Christians again. So the esoteric nature of Masonic symbolism and rites as in right, passive, like rites, passive, doing stuff, rites, led to Freemasons first being accused of secretly practicing Satanism in the late 18th century. The original allegation of conspiracy within Freemasonry to subvert religions and governments to take over world traces back to Scottish author blah, 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 blah. Some conspiracy theories eventually speculated that some founding fathers of the United States, such as George Washington and Benjamin Franklin, were having Masonic sacred geometric designs interwoven into American society, particularly with the Great Seal of the United States, the United States $1, the architecture of the National Mall landmarks, and streets and highways of Washington, D.C., as part of a master plan to create the first Masonic government as a model for the coming New World Order. There is a lot of different Masonic symbols and ideology peppered throughout America. So the Eye of Providence is probably the most famous. The All-Seeing Eye. This is all very Masonic. It's all very odd. Something that I put into the cover. I kept it quite simple, actually. This episode's cover is a very odd, which I always forget what it's called. Washington. So in type in Washington, it comes with Washington DC, Washington vapes, and Washington taxis. Statue. It's a very odd statue indeed. I can't remember what it's called. There we go. So it's called the George Washington, also known as the Enthroned Washington, is a large marble sculpture by Horatio Greenough, commissioned by the United States Congress in 1832 for the centennial of US President George Washington's birth. But that's not normal. If you compare this to various other leaders who get their statues, he's, I don't think he was ever as ripped as that. But it's just very odd, isn't it? But the hand pointing up is a very Christian symbology, which is odd considering it seems to be very Masonic. The seated and sandal-wearing Washington gazes sternly ahead. He is bare-chested, and his right arm and hand gesture with upraised index finger towards heaven. If we click on that, will that? No, it won't. It just goes to the index finger. His left palm and forearm cradle a sheathed sword, hilt forward, symbolizing Washington turning over power to the people at the conclusion of the American Revolutionary War. The representation of Washington in Roman clothing is indicative of neoclassical art. The original Latin inscription on the back of the statue reads, Simulacrum istud, ad magnum libertatis expellum, nec sine ipsa duraturum, Horatius Grino faciba, and translates as, Horatio Grino made this image as a great example of freedom, which will not survive without freedom itself. I don't think it's outside anymore. It is in the Smithsonian Castle. Oh no, it's been moved to the new Museum of History and Technology, now the National Museum of American History. It has been used in various different things. Oh, it doesn't really talk about the... Okay, that's very interesting. It really doesn't talk about the oddness of it. Okay, keep that to yourself then. I don't mind. So, Freemasonry, very interesting. Seems to have a lot of influence. Illuminati. Oh, we knew we were going to get here eventually, weren't we? How many episodes are we in? The Order of the Illuminati was an Enlightenment-age secret society founded by university professor Adam Weishaupt on the 1st of May 1776. Coincidence? I think not. In Upper Bavaria, Germany, the movement consisted of advocates of free thought, secularism, liberalism, republicanism, and gender equality recruited from the German Masonic lodges, who sought to teach rationalism through mystery schools. That just sounds like the Antichrist, doesn't it? In 1785, the order was infiltrated, broken up, and suppressed by the government agents of Charles Theodor, Elector of Bavaria, in his preemptive campaign to neutralise the threat of secret societies ever becoming hotbeds of conspiracies to overthrow Bavarian monarchy and its state religion, Roman Catholicism. There is no evidence that the Bavarian Illuminati survived its suppression in 1785. So, this was a really old order that happened a long time ago that was, for all intents and purposes, broken up. There were lots of these types of orders, called lots of different things, and the reason for getting together was different. Well, some of them were very similar to the Illuminati and were there for, some kind of pushing the purposes of free thought or science. Some were for specific things, like a lot of them became royal societies for various different subjects. This was brought up quite a few times, but was... Oh, does it even talk about it? I don't think it does. That's really interesting. Okay, so this was a thing that came up every now and then, but wasn't really popular. And then there was one article, which when we talk about the Illuminati, we will probably read in full, which was put in Playboy, of all places. And that basically pushed the Illuminati back into the modern consciousness. And it was put in Playboy. And it's really annoying that it doesn't talk about it, because it's a... If we click on Illuminati, does it? Let's have a look. Let's have a brief look. It was put in there as a joke, basically. And... it's just literally just different. Okay. Yeah, it was put in there as a joke. To see if you could spread the idea of something like a conspiracy, like the Illuminati as a conspiracy theory, and it worked. It has become one of the you know, everybody has heard of the Illuminati. It's incredible. But we'll definitely have to go into that in a lot more depth in its own episode. The Illuminati was an old organization that put forward free thought, secularism, liberalism, republicanism, and gender equality through various Masonic lodges, and as a result is a cabal of sorts. And if there was a cabal running and putting forward a new world order, the Illuminati would fit, and that is why it's, if the face fits and all that. The Protocols of the Elders of Zion. This is a do your own research, I think. The Protocols of the Elders of Zion is an anti-Semitic canard originally published in Russian in 1903, alleging a Judeo-Masonic conspiracy to achieve world domination. The text purports to be the minutes of the secret meetings of a cabal of Jewish masterminds, which has co-opted Freemasonry and is plotting to rule the world on behalf of all Jews because they believe themselves to be the chosen people of God. The Protocols incorporate many of the core conspiracy themes outlined in Robinson and Baal-Rule attacks on the Freemasons and overlay them with anti-Semitic allegations about anti-Tsarist, so anti-monarchy, movements in Russia. The Protocols reflect themes similar to the more general critiques of Enlightenment liberalism by conservative aristocrats who support monarchies and state religions. This one is it's anti-Semitic and anti-Masonic, and it is very similar to the Jewish blood libel, which I'm sure at some point we'll talk about, but not necessarily have an episode on by itself. The Jewish conspiracy probably deserves its own episode because it's definitely a thing that you see. Minority groups. Judaism's never been a majority, even in countries where it seemingly ruled. When those countries didn't last very long when they were ruling, or they were subjugated by other people. So it's very interesting to see certain groups pinpoint them as the problem throughout history. This isn't just a modern thing. This is a thing that's happened for a long time. And very interesting. Again, it puts that Christianity bend on it. For example, the authors of the 1982 controversial book, The Holy Blood, the Holy Grail, the Holy Blood and the Holy Grail, concluded that the Protocols was the most persuasive piece of evidence for existence and activities of the Prior of Zion. This talks about the lost lineage of Jesus, and was probably made most famous by Dan Brown. Skeptics argue that the current gambit of contemporary conspiracy theorists who use protocols to claim that they really come from some group other than the Jews, such as fallen angels or alien invaders. Although it is hard to determine whether conspiracy-minded actually believe this or are simply trying to sanitize a discredited text. Skeptics argue that it does not make much difference since they leave the actual anti-Semitic text unchanged. The result is to give the protocols credibility and circulations. It's an awkward one, isn't it? Because I don't want to not talk about them, but often there are certain conspiracy theories that are not very nice. And although this Conspiracy 101 wants to talk about conspiracy theories and, have fun with them and talk about them, where they've come from, what they're thinking, is there any truth in them? Sometimes you have to wade through the satanic panic and the anti-Semitic sentiments. So, Roundtable. This is an interesting one that probably won't have its own episode, so let's discuss it. During the second half of Britain's imperial century, between 1815 and 1914, English-born South African businessman, mining magnate and politician Cecil Rhodes advocated the British Empire re-annexing the United States of America and reforming itself into an imperial federation to bring about a hyperpower and lasting world peace. World peace through terror. In his first will, written in 1877 at the age of 23, No one writes anything good when they're 23. He expressed his wish to fund a secret society known as the Society of the Elect that would advance this goal. I'm going to do my best English-born South African accent. To and for the establishment, promotion and development of a secret society, the true aim and object whereof shall be for the extension of British rule throughout the world, the perfecting of a system of emigration from the United Kingdom and colonization by British subjects of all lands where the means of livelihood are attained by energy, labour and enterprise, and especially by the occupation by British settlers of the entire continent of Africa, the Holy Land, the valley of the Euphrates, the islands of Cyprus and Candia, and the whole of South America, the islands of the Pacific not heretofore possessed by Great Britain, the whole of the Malay archipelago, the seaboard of China and Japan, the ultimate recovery of the United States of America as an integral part of the British Empire, the inauguration of a system of colonial representation in the Imperial Parliament which may tend to weld together the disjointed members of the Empire, and finally, the foundation of so great a power as to render wars impossible and promote the best interests of humanity. That's a beautiful idea, isn't it? It's one of those things, like communism works great on paper. In 1890, 13 years after his now famous will, Rhodes elaborated on the same idea, establishment of England everywhere, which would ultimately lead to the cessation of all wars and one language throughout the world. The only thing feasible to carry out this idea is a secret society gradually absorbing the wealth of the world, and human minds of the higher order, to be devoted to such an object. Rhodes also concentrated on the Rhodes Scholarship, which had British statesman Alfred Milner as one of its trustees. Established in 1902, the original goal of the Trust Fund was to foster peace among the great powers by creating a sense of fraternity and shared worldview among future British, American and German leaders by having enabled them to study for free at the University of Oxford. Milner and British official Lionel George Curtis were the architects of the Round Table movement, a network of organisations promoting closer union between Britain and its self-governing colonies. To this end, that's kind of just the Commonwealth, isn't it? Curtis founded the Royal Institute of International Affairs. Stick Royal Institute in front of something and it sounds proper. In June 1919, and with his 1938 book, The Commonwealth of God, began advocating for the creation of imperial federation that eventually re-annexes the US, which would be presented to Protestant churches as being the work of a Christian God to elicit their support. The Commonwealth of Nations was created in 1949, but it would only be a free association of independent states rather than a powerful imperial federation imagined by Rhodes, Milner and Curtis. The Commonwealth basically now is former British colonies that occasionally get together to just see who can run fastest. Ruined my own joke there, didn't I? The Council of Foreign Relations began in 1917 with a group of New York academics who were asked by President Woodrow Wilson to offer options for the foreign policy of the United States in the interwar period. Do you reckon they were calling it the interwar period during the interwar period? Originally envisioned as a group of American and British scholars and diplomats, some of whom belonged to the Round Table movement, it was a subsequent group of 108 New York financiers, manufacturers and international lawyers organised in June 1918 by Nobel Peace Prize recipient and US Secretary of State Elihu Root. That became the Council on Foreign Relations on the 29th of July 1921. The first of the Council's projects was a quarterly journal launched in September 1922, called Foreign Affairs. The Trilateral Commission was founded in July 1973 at the initiative of the American banker David Rockefeller, who was chairman of the Council on Foreign Relations at the time. It is a private organisation established to foster closer cooperation among the United States, Europe and Japan. The Trilateral Commission is widely seen as a counterpart to the Council on Foreign Relations. In the 1960s, right-wing populist individuals and groups with a paleo-conservative worldview such as members of the John Birch Society, were the first to combine and spread a business nationalist critique of corporate internationalists networked through think tanks such as the Council on Foreign Relations, with a grand conspiracy theory casting them as front organisations for the Round Table of Anglo-American establishment, which are financed by an international banking cabal that has supposedly been plotting from the late 19th century on to impose an oligarch new world order for a global financial system. Anti-globalist conspiracy theories therefore fear that international bankers are planning to eventually subvert the independence of the US by subordinating national sovereignty to a strengthened bank for international settlements. The research findings of historian Carol Quigley, author of the 1966 book Tragedy and Hope, are taken by both conspiracy theorists of the American Old Right and New Left to substantiate this view, even though Quigley argued that establishment is not involved in a plot to implement a one-world government, but rather British and American benevolent imperialism, driven by mutual interests of economic elites in the United Kingdom and United States. Quigley also argued that, although the Round Table still exists today, its position in influencing the policies of world leaders has been much reduced from its heyday during the First World War, and slowly waned after the Second World War and the Suez Crisis. Today, the Round Table is largely a ginger group, designed to consider and gradually influence the policies of the Commonwealth of Nations, but faces strong opposition. Furthermore, in American society after 1965, the problem, according to Quigley, was that no elite was in charge and acting responsibly. Larry McDonald, the second president of the John Birch Society and conservative Democrat member of the United States House of Representatives, who represented the 7th Congressional District of Georgia, wrote a foreword for Allen's 1976 book, The Rockefeller File, wherein he claimed that the Rockefellers and their allies were driven by a desire to create a one-world government that combined supercapitalism with communism. That's an interesting mix. And would be fully under their control. He saw a conspiracy plot that was international in scope, generations old in planning, and incredibly evil in intent. In his 2002 autobiography, Memoirs, David Rockefeller wrote, "For more than a century, ideological extremists at either end of the political spectrum have seized upon well-publicized incidents to attack the Rockefeller family for the inordinate influence they claim we wield over American political and economic institutions. Some even believe we are part of a secret cabal, working against the best interests of the United States, characterizing my family and me as internationalists, and conspiring with the others around the world to build a more integrated global political and economic structure. One world, if you will. If that's the charge, I stand guilty. I am proud of it." Barkan argues that his statement is partially facetious, the claim of conspiracy and treason, and partially serious, the desire to encourage trilateral cooperation among the US, Europe, and Japan. For example, an ideal that used to be a hallmark of the internationalist wing of the Republican Party, known as the Rockefeller Republicans in honor of Nelson Rockefeller, when there was an internationalist wing. The statement, however, is taken at face value and widely cited by conspiracy theorists as proof of the Council on Foreign Relations uses its role as the brain trust of American presidents, senators, and representatives to manipulate them into supporting a new world order in the form of a one-world government. In a 13th of November 2007 interview with Canadian journalist Benjamin Fullard, Rockefeller countered that he felt no need for a world government and wished for the world's governments to work together and collaborate. He also stated that it seemed neither likely nor desirable to have only one elected government rule worldwide. He criticised accusations of him being under ruler of the world as nonsensical. Some American social critics, such as Lawrence H. Schwab, argue that the Council on Foreign Relations is an imperial brain trust, which has for decades played the central behind-the-scenes role in shaping US foreign policy choices for the post-World War II international order and the Cold War by determining what options show up on an agenda and what options do not even make it to the table. Others, such as G. William Domhoff, argue that it is in fact a mere policy discussion forum which provides the business input to US foreign policy planning. Domhoff argues that it has nearly 3,000 members, far too many for secret plans to be kept within the group. All the council does is sponsor discussion groups, debates, and speakers. As far as being secretive, it issues annual reports and allows access to its historical archives. Again, people would just say it was a front, wouldn't they? However, all these critics agree that historical studies on the CFR show that it has a very different role in the overall power structure than what is claimed by conspiracy theorists. One thing I just want to go back to is the just Rockefeller countered that he felt no need for a world government and wished for world governments to work together and collaborate. It's very hard to see a difference, isn't there, when you have something like the UN, when you have things like the EU and the European Union, where they are working together to come up with common laws, common interests to try and fix things in their mind. How is that different? It's just a scale up, isn't it? The individual countries are the equivalents of states or counties when they are together like that. So it's very easy to see why the conspiracy theorists are putting this on the table. Because even if there is no secretive cabal, there is no someone organizing it, the way that countries get together and the numbers of organizations where these countries are getting together and trying to use their power, their size, their influence is very one world government-y, even if it's not necessarily, putting it forward. That's the actual plan. Right, this is a good time for a ad break, and today we are very happy to be sponsored by the New World Trading Company. I'll just mute myself. That's a bit on the nose, isn't it? Don't you think? The New World Order. Oh, that's nice. I like that. Join us. Come and create the greatest customer experiences with us. Help us make history and become an expert alongside some of the most remarkable people you'll ever meet. This is a chance to build a career you can be proud of and learn skills that you'll use for a lifetime. What do they do? Music recruitment. Our brands. Here we go. Let's have a look. Oh. I think they just own fancy restaurants. Oh, cool. So, yeah. Try out one of the New World Trading Company's fancy restaurants. Or, if you're a musician looking for a new gig, at New World Trading Company, we pride ourselves on delivering exceptional live music across our unique and immersive venues. Brilliant. Thank you very much for sponsoring us, the New World Trading Company. Okay, so next, The Open Conspiracy. This is a very specific one. In his 1928 book, The Open Conspiracy, British writer and futurist H.G. Wells, there he is, beautiful man, love his tash, promoted cosmopolitanism and offered blueprints for a world revolution and world brain to establish a technocratic world state and planned economy. Wells warned, however, in his 1940 book, The New World Order, that when the struggle seems to be drifting defiantly towards a world social democracy, there may still be a great delays and disappointments before it becomes an efficient and beneficent world system. Countless people will hate the New World Order, be rendered unhappy by the frustrations and passions and ambitions for its advent, and will die protesting against it. When we attempt to evaluate its promise, we will have to bear in mind the distress of a generation or so of malcontents, many of them quite gallant and graceful looking people. That's a nice little compliment sandwich you did there. Wells' books were influential in giving a second meaning to the term New World Order, which would be only used by state socialist supporters and anti-communist opponents for generations to come. However, despite the popularity and notoriety of his ideas, Wells failed to exert a deeper or more lasting influence because he was unable to concentrate his energies on a direct appeal to intelligentsias who would ultimately have to coordinate the Wellesian New World Order. So that was a very specific version of the New World Order, wasn't it? H.G. Wells basically wanted to be king. New Age. This is a very open one with my friends, the Theosophists. I actually said it. I'm not going to say it again. British occultist Alice Bailey was one of the founders of the so-called New Age movement, prophesied in 1940 the eventual victory of the Allies of World War II over the Axis powers and the establishment of the Allies of a political and religious New World Order. She saw federal world government as a culmination of Wells' open conspiracy, but favourably argued that it would be a synarchist joint rule, because it was guided by the masters of ancient wisdom. Theosophists are a world into themselves, and I could spend several hours just discussing the different words and their meanings. So, this is a New Age movement that uses what's the best way to describe it? Esoteric knowledge to describe future or current events by various different peoples. It was very popular for a period, not so popular now, but has evolved into the modern New Age, which is a bit more hippie. And just, yeah. Skeptics argue, let's just read the last paragraph. Skeptics argue that the connection of conspiracy theories and occultists follows from their common fallacious premises. First, any widely accepted belief must necessarily be false. Second, stigmatized knowledge of what the establishment spurns must be true. The result is a large, self-referential network, we talked about that earlier, in which, for example, some UFO religionists promote anti-Jewish phobias while some anti-Semites practice Peruvian shamanism. The Fourth Reich. Something a little bit lighter. Conspiracy theorists often use the term Fourth Reich simply as a pejorative synonym for the New World Order to imply that its state ideology and government will be similar to Germany's Third Reich. Conspiracy theorists such as American writer Jim Mars claim that some ex-Nazis who survived the fall of the Great German Reich, along with sympathizers in the United States and elsewhere, which there were many. Well, I'm trying to think. Did we talk about that on one of the episodes? I feel like we did. I feel like we talked about that. Maybe I didn't. Maybe that was just me doing my research by myself. But yeah, there's a lot of sympathizers before the Second World War. Given haven by organisations like Odessa and Despin, has been working behind the scenes since the end of the Second World War to enact at least some principles of Nazism, e.g. militarism, imperialism, widespread spying on citizens, corporatism, the use of propaganda to manufacture a national consensus. Modern propaganda has evolved, hasn't it? It's changed a lot, and the internet is one of its breeding grounds. Interculture, government and business worldwide, but primarily the US. They cite that the influence of ex-Nazi scientists brought under the Operation Paperclip, as a very famous true conspiracy, to help advance aerospace manufacturing in the US with technological principles from Nazi UFOs, aka like Foo Fighters, the actual unidentified flying objects, not alien craft, but things that the Allies didn't really know what they were. and the acquisition and creation of conglomerates by ex-Nazis and their sympathizers after the war in both Europe and the US. Yeah, that's another one we haven't really talked about, but yeah, Nazis. It's a thing, isn't it? Is there no swastika? Swastika. Spelling it wrong. Swastika. Nope, no swastika. So let's just do the Iron Cross. It's probably a better representation of Nazism anyway, the Iron Cross. Although it's still used today by companies, so probably not. Where are we? Okay, alien invasion. This is a nice one. And one of the last. Brilliant. Since the late 1970s, extraterrestrials from other habitable planets and parallel dimensions, such as greys, and intraterrestrial from hollow Earth, such as reptilians, have been included in the New World Order conspiracy in more or less dominant roles, as in theories put forward by American writers Stan Deyo and Milton William Cooper, and British writer David Icke. The common theme in these conspiracy theories is that aliens have been among us for decades, centuries, or millennia. Still, a government cover-up enforced by Men in Black has shielded the public from knowledge of secret alien invasion. Motivated by speciesism and imperialism, these aliens have been and are secretly manipulating developments and changes in human society to more efficiently control and exploit human beings. I'm not going to go into why, because we are definitely going to do an episode on specifically David Icke, specifically the reptilians. We're definitely going to do one on Hollow Earth. We'll probably do an episode on Greys. Alien invasion being the cabal behind the New World Order, being some kind of alien, intraterrestrial, interterrestrial, is really, really interesting. I don't want to talk about it more because it's just a hotbed of brilliance, and definitely needs its place on our little thing. Reptilians, and how do I spell reptilians wrong? And there he is, reptilian in a suit. Good for him. I bet he's a banker, so I'm going to stick him next to the money. There he is. In fact, I'm going to stick him on the money, next to the globe. Scary times. Okay, I'm not going to talk about it. All right, Brave New World. Anti-science and neo-Luddite conspiracy theories emphasize technology forecasting in their New World Order conspiracy theories. They speculate that the global power elite are reactionary modernists pursuing transhumanist plans to develop and use human enhancement technologies to become a post-human ruling caste. That's very Egyptian, isn't it? To become gods. What is a god? While change accelerates towards a technological singularity, a theorized future point of discontinuity when events will accelerate at such a pace that normal, unenhanced humans will be unable to predict or even understand the rapid changes occurring in the world around them. Conspiracy theorists fear the outcome will either be an emergence of a brave new world like dystopia. So Brave New World is a relatively famous, although not as famous as 1984, work of fiction by Aldous Huxley. Democratic transhumanists, such as American sociologist James Hughes, counter that many influential members of the United States establishment are bioconservatives, strongly opposed to human enhancement, as demonstrated by President Bush's Council on Bioethics' proposed international treaty prohibiting human cloning and germline engineering. Germline is the, human reproduction. Furthermore, he argues that conspiracy theorists underestimate how fringe the transhumanist movement really is. Well, some of the best conspiracy theories that later turned out to be true were pretty fringe. So I'll just leave that there. Just leave that there. Right, let's have a little more Robot Man. Stick a Robot Man on there. But that's a very interesting one. But the people who are... Robot Man? Robot Man. I am half robot, I am half man. Full awesome. Right. That's a very interesting one, though. But the elites are necessarily changing themselves to become elites. They aren't necessarily elite in themselves, like you'd see with the various Mason and Illuminati ones, where they are already feel like they're above everybody else. The religionist ones feel like they've got the right answers to things. Or the reptiles or alien speciesism above them as well. Okay, so anything else? Gradualism is basically just saying that things happen very, very slowly, and these plans were put in place a very long time ago, and it's not going to be like a coup. It's not going to happen like that. It's going to be a slow process in order to build up people's... They want people to be used to it by the time it actually happens. Coup d'etat, again, you know, by changing things around the world, you're influencing places and peoples. And that's, you know, the whole black helicopters idea, which is basically going to be its own thing, I feel. But the idea that secret teams or... oops, no, I don't... No, I do not want to purchase the... No, go away. So the idea that these helicopters are untraceable. They're not necessarily a specific government behind them. And you'll find a lot of places that have a lot of military operations by certain governments, especially European, American, Israeli, Russian, Chinese, maybe. Governments are influencing world politics without actually being in the face of it, being the front of it. And there are lots of different examples of that. Some true, some proposed. Mass surveillance is a big one and very specific because... not specific, that's the wrong word, completely the wrong word. Very generalized and can be used across a lot of different conspiracy theories. Microchipping, changing people's ideas about stuff, stopping people from being able to live the life they want to, slowly through 1984 like surveillance. Occultism, we've talked about that. Population control is a really interesting one I'm not going to talk about. Mind control, we've talked about with MK Ultra. And then it goes into specifics of people and conspiracies. Criticism, criticism. Criticize what? Criticize these guns. I've lost my mind. You just look at that. Look at that. Like, I wanted to do this because I knew that if we are going to do so many episodes on these specific things. The amount of times I've said, we're going to do a specific episode on this, are ridiculous. But I wanted to set the groundwork. I wanted something I could point to so that people go, wait, you just jumped into Illuminati, like, in the middle of stuff. Like, what's going on? Who is this? Why is this here? Why are people worried about this Bavarian 18th century cult thing? The New World Order is the blanket that is covering the knees of many different conspirators. So let's just go through them. We've got the Freemasons and the Illuminati. Very interesting government. Very interesting agencies that are secretive. Naturally going to spawn conspiracy theories. We have got older groups that may or may not be causing problems now. So communism, Nazism. We have religion in all its different forms. Either Christian, thumbs up Jesus, Judaism, Jews controlling everything, Satanism. We have the idea that money is the main driving force. We've got the banks. We've got the the reptilians, who are able to fund various things. And we've got the changing of humans, either into reptiles, which is a thing, or through robotics, through altering our what makes us human. And then we've got individual people and individual governments doing things secretly through black helicopters, through various different political maneuverings around the world. Specific people like the Rockefellers. Who else was it? Rockefellers and oh my god, I can't believe I've forgotten their names. I'm just going to leave that in there as a background because it's just beautiful. Will I be able to find it? Bilderbergs, Rockefellers, and the Rothschilds. It's there. It's there. The draft's there, and I still forgot. This has been a very interesting episode, but I've definitely reached the limit of what I can learn today. And this has definitely been a heavy episode. There's been some dark bits, but there's been some joyous bits. Reptilians always brings a smile to my face. But as always, every episode I always try and end on something a little more fun, a little less heavy, a little bit more lighthearted. So, as you probably cottoned on earlier, I was doing some research into the Illuminati. That Playboy article was very interesting, and that led me down an avenue of this. Lena. It is a you may have heard of this. I've never heard of this, and I found it very fascinating because I've heard of examples like this for other different things. So, Lena is a standard test image used in the field of image processing since 1973. It is a picture of Swedish model Lena Thorson, shot by photographer Dwight Hooker, cropped from a centerfold of a Playboy magazine. So this is the image that is used to calibrate, basically. This is like a standard test image. It's like a one that's just there. Before Lena, the first use of Playboy magazine image to illustrate image processing algorithms was in 1961. It's just so strange that they would use Playboy photos for this compared to, I don't know, a photo of a duck or a plane or something else. The use of the image has produced controversy because Playboy is seen by some as degrading to women. It's just odd that that's the photo that would be used. But it doesn't really say why. It was, it was used for different things, image differing, facsimiles, scans and all that. Used, blah, blah, blah. Teddy Smith. Okay. Alexander Shorchuk estimates that it was in June or July of 1973 when he, then assistant professor of electrical engineering at University of South Carolina, Signal and Image Processing Institute, along with a graduate student and the SIPI lab manager, there we go, this is why it's students, isn't it? That's why it's the Playboy image, was hurriedly searching the lab for a good image to scan for a colleague's conference paper. They got tired of their stock of usual test images, dull stuff dating back to television standards work in the early 1960s. They wanted something glossy to ensure good output, dynamic range, and they wanted a human face. Just then, somebody happened to walk in with a recent issue of Playboy. The engineers tore away the top third of the centerfolds so that they could wrap it around the drum of their Murray-head wire photo scanner, which they had outfitted with analog to digital converters, one for each red, green, and blue channels. And a Hewlett-Packard 2100 mini computer. The Muirhead had a fixed resolution of 100 lines per inch. Oh my god, Windows. Leave me be. So they limited the scan to the top 5.12 inches, that's lovely, isn't it, of the picture, effectively cropping it at the subject's shoulders. And that's what became that. Now, I have heard of various different things, and Some of these are pretty obvious, but we'll go through them. I've never heard of it. I know it's some humanoid android. That's not what. That's not. Carol Hersey was the test card F lady. So this, if you're from Britain, you would have seen this a lot when channels weren't on, or just before, or during, etc., etc. You'd see this test card, so it would calibrate certain things. Yeah, very common. But it's the guy who put it together is his daughter, basically. Lorem ipsum is the placeholder text commonly used to demonstrate the visual form of a document or typeface without relying on meaningful content. What is it actually of, though? Is a typically corrupted version of De Finibus Baronum et Malorum, a 1st century BC text by Roman statesman and philosopher Cicero, with words altered, added, and removed to make it nonsensical and improper Latin. Interesting. Very interesting. Yep, again, color chart. I think most people have seen these. You hold them up to the cameras. I think I've got one somewhere. I have no idea where it is. You hold it up to the cameras and then the cameras can calibrate themselves, etc., etc. Stanford Bunny. This isn't one I've heard of, but it's a 3D test model. The one I've heard of is the teapot. There it is. The Utah teapot, or the Newell teapot, which is like a 3D render that was used to test rendering stuff in 3D. China Girl, image with explanatory labels. I have never seen... Whoa, that's tiny. I have never seen that. In motion picture industry, a China Girl is a type of test film, an image of a woman accompanied by a color bars that appears for a few frames, typically 1 or 4, in a real leader. Excellent. Again, very similar to the, whatever it was called, Card F, Standard Card F. And then we're back to New World Order conspiracy theory. Perfect. Right. Whoa. An hour and a half. I'm actually pretty happy with that. Considering how much stuff there was, I didn't want to go on a very long... I didn't want this episode to be very, very long. Because... Yeah. It could have gone on for ages, and I knew that we were going to talk about more of them in depth and have their own episodes. So, yeah. Thank you very much for watching. This has been an interesting episode, and I hope you join me for future episodes where we discuss some of the things we've talked about today. Thank you very much for watching. I've been Alex Whitney, and don't forget to breathe.